Hey, welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Here, it's kind of like Chuck E. Cheese, but way fucking creepier. All right, so Five Nights at Freddy's, another PG-13 Blumhouse horror movie. So I was definitely a little bit skeptical going into this movie, like I was with Megan, a PG-13 horror movie. I like my gore, I like my kills, I like my scares. So is it going to be scary enough for me? Is there going to be just really enough happening there to make it really a horror movie? Is it going to be made for maybe a younger audience? I don't know. I went into it kind of blind like I did with Megan, not really expecting too much. And I was actually kind of surprised, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons why I was surprised. So essentially this movie follows this guy named Mike Schmidt, whose life is clearly kind of in shambles. He's having a hard time keeping down a job. He keeps basically getting fired from every job possible. And then eventually he ends up going to kind of like a career counselor who ends up being Matthew Lillard, who I thought did a great job in that role, and I enjoyed that aspect of the movie. But anyways, he's kind of like, all right, I've got a job for you if you want it. I mean, you're probably going to quit. You're probably going to hate it. The hours suck, but you ready? You want it? So basically, Mike's like, I don't want to work nights. And then things kind of change. Obviously, he accepts the job. And you can tell right off the bat, Mike's just not this ordinary guy who's just kind of struggling with life just in general. He's actually had some crazy stuff happen to him that has caused him to kind of be in the place that he's at. You're kind of like, who is this girl that he lives with? Is that his daughter? He looks a little too young to be having a daughter of that age. And it turns out that's actually his sister. And as the movie goes on, I really do enjoy how we get to learn more about Mike's character and just how deep his character is. And it's a pretty damn sad story. His entire backstory with his sister and his family and his brother that he used to have. It's a really deep story. And just as a father myself, I found myself connecting to that story. I've got a son and a daughter, so it's kind of like that dynamic of the older brother looking after his sister, which is obviously something any dad would aspire to have. But it's just an interesting part of the story that I definitely found myself, like I said, connecting with. I just mentioned a second ago that Mike's got a younger sister. Well, his younger sister is played by Piper Rubio. Great name, by the way. But she plays Abby in the movie. Definitely does a very, very good job acting in that role. And just overall, you like her character. She's somebody you root for. She seems like a genuinely really good kid who likes her brother regardless of all the shit he's going through and kind of all the stresses that he kind of puts on her at times. But she's a really good character, and I enjoyed her in the story. And then once Mike actually does start his job as the new security guard at the pizzeria, I don't know if it's just my generation, my age, but I'm a sucker for any abandoned mall, abandoned kind of 80s place like this. And that's essentially what it is. It's a pizzeria that was abandoned in the 80s because some kids disappeared and just a lot of things went on that kind of, it sounds like ruined the kind of pizzeria's brand in a way. So they kind of had to close it down. But the owner, for some, reason that we're not really aware of in the moment, has kept it open all these years. They just say it's because he has a hard time letting go. But we definitely get a hint that there's probably more to it than that in the story. But yeah, I don't know what it is, just abandoned malls, abandoned places like this in the movie where it's almost like it hasn't been touched, especially. It's one of the only ways that you can realistically hop in a time machine to a sense, You go into these places and it's literally like you're being taken back in time. And to me, that's always really damn cool. I really, really enjoyed that. And just that aspect in general is something I find cool. Now, not only does Mike have to deal with I've got this new job, I don't really know what I'm doing. Everybody's really ambiguous and weird about this place. What's going on here? This seems weird. There's also some weird things kind of happening at night. On top of that, he's got this crazy aunt that wants to kind of take over custody of Abby. And it just kind of sounds like because she wants the checks every month from the government, essentially. So there's just this battle where she's trying to take over, being Abby's parent instead of him. But he's really the only one that really, truly cares about her. So throughout the movie, it's interesting just watching him kind of navigate that kind of dynamic. And you find yourself rooting for him. And you just find yourself hating her. And she does a good job as the villain also in the movie. I think the movie also does a good job just keeping you wondering throughout the entire story. You've got this cop that kind of just starts to randomly show up named Vanessa. She's not only a really good looking cop, so you're okay, what's up with that? She's nothing again. I'm not saying there's cops out there that are all bad looking, but you're damn, you don't really look like a cop. You know what I mean? You look like a model. So besides that, you're also kind of like, what are you doing here? Why do you keep showing up? Why do you keep, like, she also shows up at Mike's house. There's just all these little things that just kind of keep you wondering, okay, why is she so invested in this place? What's up with her? What's going on with her? While at the same time, you're also trying to peel back these stories about Mike, as Mike's kind of having all of these dreams, because that's another big aspect of the movie is Mike really is into his dreams and piecing apart different aspects of his dreams. He's got this book that he's reading that kind of talks about all these interesting facts about how you can kind of manipulate your dreams in a way, because Mike has this trauma with his younger brother, and through his dreams, he tries to have like the most lucid dreams possible to try to figure out clues on how, like, what happened to his younger brother many years ago named Garrett. So it's just interesting. You know, there's so many different things with the dreams and with this cop that just keeps you kind of thinking along the way and wanting more and wondering, okay, what's going to happen here? Why is this happening? What's this person doing? What's their motive? What's going to happen with the dreams? And I enjoyed that aspect of the movie. I will say, though, there were definitely some plot lines in this movie that felt like a direct, I don't want to say ripoff, but like directly inspired from Megan. You've got a little girl who's very nice. There's a custody battle going on there, like in Megan. If you've seen Megan, the animatronics, that's very, very similar as well. The animatronics on how they like also secretly do evil things, you kind of find out about. That part's very, very interesting. There's also a part towards the end of the movie that also really, really reminds me of Megan, how like one of the animatronics shows up in a place that you wouldn't expect them to be in. And the little girl, Abby's kind of like, oh, what are you doing here? You know? And she doesn't yet know what that animatronic, I'll just call him, is what their motive is, really. So it's very similar to Megan. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I would probably say that's a negative because it is so familiar and it's coming from Blumhouse. Both movies are. So to me, I was kind of like, that felt like a little bit of a copy and paste. So I probably would say that is a bit of a negative. There is one moment in the movie where Abby hides in this ball pit, which I just thought was great. It reminded me of being a kid, like hiding from my parents in the ball pit at McDonald's, like, damn you, Mom, you won't get me another ice cream cone? What the hell? Okay, well, I'm going to play dead in the ball pit. But surprisingly, throughout the movie, like, you know, 3/4 into the movie, I kind of said to myself, I'm still engaged here. I'm like really focusing on what's going to happen. Like, what's up with this cop? When you do find out kind of her backstory, you're like, oh, damn, that's kind of interesting. And then the big like reveal at the end, who's behind all of this and really what's happening, what happened to his brother, what's going on with the other animatronics. Just why has this place been open since the 80s? That whole reveal at the end, I was like, oh, damn. But to me, also, I did catch myself saying, like, why didn't I notice that? I should have noticed that. I forgot about something. And then clearly that person was going to kind of be, you know, showcased later at the end of the movie. And I kind of forgot about that. But still, it was surprisingly rewarding. And I enjoyed like that big reveal at the end of the movie. Now, it's a PG-13 horror movie. So I got to kind of talk about the scares and like some of the gore and stuff like that. And yes, the gore is very, very toned down. You really don't get much of it at all. There is a few moments where you kind of see the aftermath of what's happening. There is a scene kind of where somebody kind of gets like their body kind of collapsed in a way a little bit, which was kind of cool. But overall, you know, it's actually probably less gore than Megan. If you've seen Megan, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'd probably say it was less gore, but I'm trying to remember if that was the unrated or not. But very similar. I would say it's probably very, very similar. It's the same type of formula. And it's also designed for the same kind of demographic, really. Megan did very well, so they're probably hoping for the same thing in this movie. But the gore and the scares in both those movies, probably very similar. As far as the scares go in this movie, I thought it was pretty atmospheric at times. There was a handful of jump scares that were pretty decent. Overall, I wouldn't say it's a scary movie necessarily. I mean, unless you're really, really scared of like dolls like this, big animatronics, like you've been to Chuck E. Cheese and maybe at Chuck E. Cheese something malfunctioned, it scared the shit out of you and has scarred you ever since, you know, that young age, then yeah, this would probably scare the hell out of you. Or like, you know, the old Ronald McDonald clown, something like that. That would probably scare you. There's something in this that kind of reminded me of that. Overall, I don't think the movie was necessarily scary, but I did want to kind of talk about that for a second because it is a PG-13 horror movie. But overall, I liked kind of the 80s vibe in the movie. I enjoyed the characters overall. Their backstories in the movie were interesting to me. I found myself engaged throughout the movie, which was very, very surprising. I found myself really wanting to know what's Vanessa's backstory, what's going to be the final reveal, who's behind all this, what happened to his younger brother, what's going to happen to Abby, what's going to happen with their whole relationship. And I found myself really engaged, and I surprisingly really enjoyed this movie. So yeah, if you're looking for a horror movie, especially around Halloween time, that's maybe good for a family with teenage kids, this is definitely a good one for you. Or if you're just, an adult looking for kind of a scary movie that's not too intense, that's not too gory, that's not too scary, this is a pretty damn good movie for that. With that said, I'm giving Five Nights at Freddy's a B for entertainment, a C- for the gore and the scares, and overall an 8 out of 10. But there you go, that is my review of Five Nights at Freddy's. I hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and check out one of these other videos right next to me if you want to go and see some more horror content on my channel. Got some really cool stuff that has already came out in October and some really cool stuff coming very, very soon to round out the month. But anyways, everybody, thanks again so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. And don't forget, it is always Halloween.